Is Disney putting their best foot forward when it comes to costumes? Let's discuss. Welcome to Princess and Scoundrel, where we take you along our scrappily ever after from Fantasyland to Tatooine and everything in between. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Steven.
And we have a special guest on this episode.
Yeah.
We're talking about costuming at the Disney parks specifically, but how do those costumes stack up to costuming groups, to cosplayers, to Disbounders? And we could talk about it. We could have a conversation.
Well, so I've wanted to have this guest on for quite some time. And just because I love listening to his conversations. But I had to figure out a way to have him on our show. And with Mos Eisley just happening, Halloween just happening, like what better person to talk to than our resident armorer, Mike Forrester?
Hello, my friends. It is so lovely that we're finally able to connect despite talking literally every day.
So for our guests that if they for some reason have not listened to Armor Party yet, can you explain to them what it is you do, what it is you talk about?
Yeah, so Armor Party is a podcast in which I interview people who have built costumes within the Star Wars sphere, right? And this started, I've been a 501st member since I think 2017, and I've gone on to build 5 costumes now, which is wild to think about. But in the process of me building costumes, I was just meeting a lot of very interesting people that either were like, just hobbyists, or they were people that actually had worked on the show and they were just fans of Star Wars and they were dressing up as Star Wars characters like for Saturday nights to go and hang out with other people who love this stuff. And then I said, I really want to share more of these stories because there's so many incredible people that use costuming as not only a creative outlet, but also to change their communities. And really what I think that you start to see is adults that have kind of found their sense of purpose, and they've kind of found a healthy, maybe obsessive release of the normal droves of just being a regular old adult with a day job, right? And so Star Wars costuming, I think, has really encouraged a lot of people to be themselves and do some incredible things along the way. And that's kind of where the idea for Armor Party, to have this long-form conversation where people could take me to school on stuff that I don't know about and then get to talk to some people who just have truly just very interesting stories about their costuming journey. And when we happen to be shared by the same network, our friends over in Thank the Maker. And I think we've got a great little crew of podcasts here that are very informative for all different facts of Star Wars life. But that's really what Armor Party's focus is among all of these great conversations that we're able to have.
And you do it well because you don't just talk to people that have built costumes for Star Wars or people that are acting in Star Wars in these costumes. You talk to cosplayers that are working out of their basements and their garage. And that's incredible to have such a wide variety, because I don't relate to the people that are acting in Star Wars, but people that can make this really cool stuff in their garage, I'm like, well, hey, I could do that. I can try my hand at that. So it's really cool that you reached out to everybody. Yeah. So we're going to break this down. I don't want to call it like a head to head, but how does Disney stack up against cosplayers and costuming groups? So the first thing I think we should look at is the details and the accuracy of the costumes for each of those groups. And when I say cosplayers, it's just like the people that you are interviewing. It's the people doing it in their garage. It's the people that are making it for Star Wars and going to these conventions and everybody in between. But in terms of accuracy, who do you think demands a higher standard of quality? Do you think it's the Disney costumers, or do you think it is the costuming groups?
It's a tough question because we know that so many different factors go into what makes both costumes what they are and the purpose that they serve. So it's very common, of course, when someone finds, out that you're a costumer And we all joke among the clubs that you always get the one person who's like, "Hey, my kid's got a birthday party. I think I could wear your stormtrooper costume." And we're like, no, no, not at all. But what people don't understand is that oftentimes they're not one size fits all, right? You have a costume that's built to your spec, and in Disney's case, in that particular case, I've seen the job postings, and you do have to fit a certain body type that is not inclusive because the costumes are designed, and they do have some give that are put in there. But really what you have too at the same time is you also take into climate, the way that costumers, that me, especially way up here in Michigan, I've never had to mess with helmet fans. I've never had to mess with cooling vests, but I know tons of people down south. Overheating is a serious thing. You could go and troop a baseball game, or a Devil Rays game, or you could troop any summer activity down in Florida or down in Texas, and people are like, you have to consider the fact that you're wearing all black armor, this helmet, and all of that. You could overheat. And so what I think California and Florida both have to compensate for is different factors of like what goes into actually wearing these things. And so it's hard to say, who demands more detail, because oftentimes, especially recently with Disney, they're kind of cut from the same cloth. So Disney at this point is actually sending us production photographs, what are like their archival photos of these costumes, and they're saying, here's the look at it. And they're doing the same thing to the prop shops that work at both Batuu East and Batuu West. So I would say the accuracy is pretty much like at the same level, and the demand for it. You're going to have a couple goofy things like, it's easier for someone to get the costume off, 3D printed parts, that kind of stuff. You're going to see some difference of like what would be a stunt version of the costume that you would see on screen versus the hero costume. And so that's things like rubber buckles and all this other stuff that you can paint and know that you're not really going to see it because the guy's moving fast. But the accuracy as far as both of them, I don't think there's, the costumers will say, "Oh, we're the authority," but Disney's also Disney. They're sharing their own resources. I guarantee you of that. So it's really easy to go, "Oh, can you believe what they did?" I'm like, well, I can believe what they did because they're making multiples of them and things are happening and stuff. So that's a good question, but I think they're about accuracy is accuracy, and they both go for the purpose of accuracy.
Do you think that some of these, this armor, these costumes at Galaxy's Edge would qualify for 501st?
Or Rebel Legion.
Or Rebel Legion, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. The 501st is the toughest club to get into because they don't allow for any customization. It's screen accurate costumes or interpretations in the case of animated characters. But there isn't any leeway, and so you're not going to have a generic pilot, right? Like we have hero pilots for the X-Wings, we have hero pilots for other ships, and you're kind of building it to spec, but they would allow you to be able to paint your own X-Wing helmet, right? That's just a general pilot. Mandalorian Mercs, another popular club, they allow for customization, and that can go all over the place. That can be for some, they have to meet a criteria, but there's a lot of stuff that might, that looks a little out of character for some of the current films that we see. And then we have the 501st, which 501st, like I said, is only screen accurate characters or interpretations agreed upon by the club. So there really isn't too much. And then within there, we have different levels. So you could be a level 3 Boba Fett, and that is literally like your blaster has to have a wood grip. It's got to have a metal scope. It's got to have all of that stuff. And so even that stuff that Disney would say, we don't want that. So I'm willing to bet that is not a, there's a couple of us have, rubber injected blasters. And then you have to kind of figure out, you have to remove the seam lines of where the mold was made and all that. But I don't even think Disney would mess with anything metal. There are guys who have the original Mark I Weebly flare gun from Empire Strikes Back, or at least metal reproductions of them. Disney wouldn't mess with that. It's not worth it for them. So I would say in terms of the costumes that you see, would they pass? For sure.
So that kind of led me into like the next little, we wanted to do the reverse question is of if the 501st would be allowed to be a costume in Disney. And you're talking about this 501st, having a level 3. Like I knew that there was a certain, there's criteria for the 501st, like you had to have these certain things, but I didn't realize there was even other, like, you could have a plastic gun as opposed to a rubber gun to a
same
metal gun or something. So,
well, haven't they had stormtroopers from the 501st go to Disney events? Or am I making that up? I could be making that up.
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah. So even things like we saw them actually last year at the Macy's Day Parade. All of our friends, Justin Sonfield, friend of the show, a bunch of them had First Order stormtroopers, and then in that particular case, they actually get quote unquote hired by Disney, and so then we're no longer considered 501st members. We're not really allowed to like talk about it because once we get paid by Disney, then it becomes you're a Disney contractor. But there have been many times where 501st members have been brought in to do official stuff like that. So they're very aware. Their PR team is very aware of the standards that we set. We actually have a secondary set of images. We actually have a second. It's called a database. It's called the Outer Rim database, and you actually don't need to be a club member to update your information on the Outer Rim database. And that's how they're able to search by costume and see your specs. So you actually upload a front of yourself, a side, a back, and they will go through and they can categorize it by, stormtrooper, snowtrooper, scout trooper, pretty much any designation in there. They can go through and they can search you. So they're very aware. Of course, this is the third time that we've been asked to come to actually do production, and that's probably 5, 6, 7 plus opportunities now for the 501st among the commercials, Battlefront commercials, Fallen Order commercials. We had 501st members there.
And when you say they, you're referring to Disney and or Lucasfilm, like whenever they're doing these bigger, licensed productions or whatever.
Yep, exactly. So it's usually Lucasfilm that's the point of contact because, Disney has Star Wars projects when they want to have them. But other than that, the PR people are usually in communication with each other. So
now, is it one of those, I don't know how long you've been in the 501st, but does it feel like it's one of those payoffs that there was such a high, like, I don't recall before Lucasfilm seeking, these cosplayers or these costumers out to come be extras. And it was, y'all always had that kind of level of detail just because it was a passion. But now it almost feels like it's paying off because they are calling you guys and saying, hey, we need scout troopers, or hey, we need, stormtroopers or whatever. So is it like almost like vindicating, like, oh yes, like all this hard work was like, it's finally paying off?
Well, Stephen, that depends. If you live in California, maybe. If you live anywhere else, absolutely not. No. I think really, in my conversation with Chris Bartlett, who has played almost pretty much every single protocol droid you've ever seen in The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan. Chris was just a fan, and he just wanted to make these costumes to wear to go to conventions and bring these characters to life. And then eventually what happened is someone saw it, said, that's really good, and then got called by Lucasfilm to say, hey, would you be able to fill in? It's not like they fly Anthony Daniels to come out to do an appearance somewhere. He's not going to get in the suit for that. So Chris kind of became that person, and he's done it for almost 20 years now. But that just started as him wanting to build a costume. And really what you see with a lot of the people in these clubs, especially with like the droid builders, Steven, like yourself, McMaster and all of these other guys, they're just nerds. They're just engineers. They're guys who just like to build stuff. And then eventually what happens is they make enough noise by just bringing a Hollywood level production to life in their garage. And enough people are connected. And, you know, Star Wars is way smaller. The hardcore fans, way smaller community than you think. And look at what we've done as just fans of this franchise to kind of be able to carve our own little space out in it. And so for the costuming clubs, 501st especially is just over 11,000 members worldwide. I don't think any of us join the club to hope that one day we get put in a production. I would say it's certainly a perk. It's been a really cool thing. I know a lot of people who have built stormtroopers that normally wouldn't build stormtroopers because they know in general that's usually what's going to get called. But in general, I think most people, they build costumes because they love it and they know that in their small little community where they can wear their costume and be and make someone happy and make someone smile. That's why we do it. Going to children's hospitals and giving people a temporary sense of relief and you know, for a movie premiere, being able to have people walk in and have to walk by a stormtrooper before they go see a Star Wars. Like, that's the stuff that gets us going. But the productions, I mean, that was a Dave Filoni call. It's really cool that it's happened. But like I said, if you're not in Southern California or you're not in New York, you don't really get those calls. So
that doesn't happen in Michigan.
Cool. It doesn't. No, actually, people don't even know where Michigan is. So unfortunately, no Michigan. No one's calling me up, Sarah. I wish.
It's
I wish
Canada,
it were
right?
so, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. We actually won a war over that, Sarah. So no, it's not a thing.
Thanks for.
But to answer your question, Steve, yeah, sure. That's we do geography here up in Michigan. So, yeah, but no, it's really. I don't think anyone, you know, if you're joining for that reason, I think enough people would tell you you can spend money a lot more foolishly, for sure.
All right, so you mentioned like how cool it would be if you're walking past a stormtrooper at a movie premiere. So moving on to like the immersion that comes with costuming, how important are costumes when it comes to immersion, specifically in the Disney parks? Like Galaxy's Edge, definitely, right? And then even beyond that, Star Cruiser. But let's kind of drill down, like Disney parks, Galaxy's Edge, Star Cruiser. Star Cruiser is just like it when it comes to immersion in the parks.
Next level immersion. Yeah. I mean, my take on it, Galaxy's Edge was a unique experience because Galaxy's Edge was supposed to disconnect you from the rest of Disney. Like that was its intention, right?
Right.
The idea of Galaxy's Edge was that you were supposed to leave the galaxy and you were supposed to come to a new planet of Batuu, and that was supposed to purposefully not. I mean, we knew it. That's what they were going for. They've said it. They've showed it off, and that's the reason why you can ask where. You know, how do I get to Toy Story Land? And they're like, oh, that must be on a different galaxy. That they don't do that anywhere else on purpose, right? So to not have people in costume, to not have people in these off-world garments, to not have stormtroopers, to not have our own Disney princess, Rey, walking around, wasn't the point of Galaxy's Edge. Galaxy's Edge was supposed to be that transportation away from the park. I don't know how you do Star Wars without costumes. They're the most iconic looks of any science fiction, probably even American cinema, in my opinion, of silhouettes and all that. So I don't know how you would have pulled it off. Even Star Tours and even your littlest production always kind of needs to have a character in there. So I would say that you can't have Star Wars without having someone in costume to really like sell you on the idea that you're in Star Wars. You're in a Star Wars now.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of tells to that initial thought when people were seeing Star Cruiser. I mean, I guess we're kind of going is there was kind of like, it doesn't feel like Star Wars because if you don't have those silhouettes of these characters that you know, or that grunginess of Tatooine, or the underworld that we were typically seeing, it felt missing with this Chandrilla and Starline.
So clean and pristine.
However, with new shows like Andor, and we're seeing more, Mon Mothma's, like we see that Chandrilla lifestyle where it's like beautiful, bold, and like clean lines, and just, abstract clothing, asymmetrical clothing or whatever.
Jonathan Adler chairs.
Yeah. So it doesn't feel out of world anymore to me. Like it just like, solidifies it more, like, no, this is, yes, there's Tatooine, there's Batuu, where it's the underworld, but when you want, fine dining, here's Star Cruiser, here's the Halcyon. So,
well, and they take the costumes or the characters in Star Cruiser even further than they do on Galaxy's Edge. And I don't know if it's because it's indoors and they're able to do a lot more, but we see a lot more face painted characters. I think there's 3 total.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 and they're full face paint. We have aliens, we have creatures, we have droids roaming around. Like, we have so much more there. And I know everybody always wants more characters, more aliens, more creatures, but they've amped it up in a big way.
And I think that comes from kind of what Mike was saying about the costumes, where if it's in a cool temperature, it's, 60 all the time, you're not going to need, these cooling systems, where in Florida, out in those what would have Batuu, the three
sons of Batuu,
it's hot.
Yeah.
And you feel for these characters. Like if you've ever like worn a helmet for a while, Mike, you could even more attest to it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It is hot. And you're breathing your own, hot breath. And so
all these things are true. Yes.
So I think that's where it's in a controlled environment, more cool temperatures, and they are able to have these costume characters walking around, for longer periods of time.
Yeah. And it helps sell the experience.
Yeah.
Like Mike was saying, like, Star Cruiser specifically, you're paying a good amount of money to be there. You want to be immersed in this experience. And so if everybody there was just a human in a uniform of some way, you're not going to really believe that you've been transported somewhere else. And I think that's part of, too, the reason why Disney costuming has to be so good, is because if there are things that are off about it, you're like, wait a second. I mean, Star Wars fans in general are just so critical about everything, that if something's out of place, if there's the jeans guy in Mandalorian, you're like, no. So Disney has to do that, and they have to do it live in front of people all the time.
Well, and then other side of it, Mike, and this is where my question to you is, how someone could build a costume and say, I'm going to be, Boba Fett, I'm going to be Din Djarin, but there is not that level of, kind of the Chris Bartlett advice of become that character. If it's just some guy that's wearing like, hey, I built it. I spent my time building it, but he's just kind of like trotting along, like jolly, like, hey, what's up?
Right.
What's up? It doesn't give you that immersion. You're kind of like, oh, well, that's just some guy in a Din Djarin costume, in a Mando costume. Right. So I think there's another part of building a costume is like, hey, you got to start building your little swagger. You kind of like, slink down a little bit, or kind of like always be, turning your head type of thing. And
So is that something that the 501st kind of guides you or teaches you, is like, they have to have this kind of demeanor, this kind of gait, or if you're a stormtrooper, here's how you walk. Like we saw Andor had to learn how to, march. Do they teach you that?
I mean, there are, when we get to do Lucasfilm official events, they do kind of have us say, hey, this is a Lucasfilm official event. And so you'll very oftentimes have the stormtroopers that are standing guard. You'll have specific roles. It kind of depends what it is. If we're an escort for someone, that means that we'll walk in single file line. We'll do these things. Other than that, we kind of hope that people in general try and keep a little bit of the immersion going. I mean, we just did our downtown Halloween, and we had 4 snowtroopers and we had a TIE pilot. And our fun was like finding all the little Darth Vaders and being like, Lord Vader, we found, and
Oh.
even the Darth Vaders got scared because all of a sudden a bunch of stormtroopers come, and we had so many kids that were there's the designs. It really speaks to how iconic the designs are because the designs are scary. Kids are, if they're not very familiar with us, especially the snowtroopers, because the snowtroopers don't have faces. We look scary. So there is a certain intimidation that is built into the design of the costumes. But when it comes to becoming the character, it kind of loses the immersion a little bit for people when Boba Fett is out there dancing to the Macarena, right? And I'm generally, I'm probably one of our more outgoing troopers in terms of trying to talk to people. Part of the wit is really funny when, we get all the time, like, aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? We have mics on, and in general, we never take our helmets off outside. I don't want anyone to know who I am under there. And our whole group feels the same way. So we try to keep the mystery for sure. But we interact with people, it's like we'll go up, and if there's people in line, we'll go up to them and be like, hey, let's see your ID. And they'll kind of look over like, is he asking me that? And I'll be like, come on, hand it over, and they're just like, whoa. That's really cool for people to experience that. They're waiting in line to go see a movie, and all of a sudden they see us walking over, and they're like, "Oh no, I better not get shaken down on this." But in terms of keeping that immersion for people, what's interesting too, and the fact that we haven't talked about it, that really actually goes to the credit of the performers inside of the suits, is like the rigging system for the sound electronics and all of that. And I don't know if people don't know how the stormtroopers actually talk, but they are rigged up with these, like, basically these computer chips on their hands, and they're motion activated. So your wrist will, if you spin your wrist or if you close it, they actually will activate a whole different set of gestures on the, the positive expressions or the negative expressions. And that's why the stormtroopers are they're very animated, because they're actually activating different gestures within their costumes. So Kylo does that, stormtroopers do it, Boba Fett does it. And that's why you see a lot of those really heavy hand pulls. They almost look like they're being stage actors.
Yeah.
But you have to be, you got to be on it. If people are coming up and trying to have a conversation with you, they rarely fumble. And so there's a lot of going, hey, are you going to do this? And the stormtroopers go, we're watching you. You see them do it. So they have to be thinking all the time. It's certainly a performance. It is not a guy walking around just vibing people out. I mean, they're working for sure.
And I think the characters, like you going to the Halloween festival, I know for us and for our kids, the things that I think our kids remember most from any trip we take to the parks is the characters. It's not necessarily the rides or the shows or the smells or anything like that. It's those characters. Like, those characters are what really sells it. And you're like, I met Mickey Mouse, or our daughter's obsessed with Wani.
Well, and it kind of, when you were saying it, I hadn't thought about it in at this angle or this perspective. Is there could be people that are like, we're wanting aliens, more aliens and more creatures at Galaxy's Edge, but there may be people that have phobias and that are scared, like that are not, and I think that's, now thinking about it, Disney has to kind of put all those things, like, oh, wait a minute, we can't have this, boss character, this, scary lizard man, greeting kids and stuff, because we don't know how receptive it's going to be. But I don't know why it just like hit me now that that's probably why they don't have like that scary of a creature.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and it's not to say that I've always been curious as to why the Star Cruiser characters have been exclusive to the Star Cruiser. The question for, like, if I guess we could be a little bit critical, because I would love to see this part of what the amount of work that they've put in is so apparent when you go and experience it. But like, how curious would you be if you're on Batu on the excursion date and Captain Kevin just walks through and she says like, what's going on over here? And there's some kind of little theatric that happens and you're just there and you're like, who is that? Like, what's going on over there? Or you have, Croy comes out and talks with the other lieutenant. And if you're on the excursion, them interacting with people that they can see that are on the Star Cruiser, like, how would you not be like, what is happening? I got to ask about this, because I think that there is so much story that's so fun to interact with when you're on the Star Cruiser. And the costumes are obviously like, they're right on. And to have Wani just do a fast walk around, of course, you'd have to have handlers for sure. But to have Wani walk around, I think would almost appease the people who thought that Galaxy's Edge, which people always look at the concept art and they go, it could have been this. Well, concept art is better than every movie you've ever seen. But the point is like, how rad would that be if Wani went up and interacted with Chewbacca or something? Because that they interact on the ship.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Can we say that?
Yeah.
Anyways, Chewie's on the poster, whatever.
Yeah,
if you're listening to Princess and Scoundrel, you know what's going on. So anyways, but the point is, what I'm getting at is like, how rad would that be to spark interest that there is a whole nother storyline that's going on at this park that you might not know about yet. I'm like shocked that they haven't done that yet, but I understand the not the legality, but the part of having someone like Kevin who is full face paint with contacts. And if she is outside in the Florida sun in July, there is probably a pretty good chance that something's going to happen with that, but they're smart enough to be able to figure that out. I just can't figure out why they haven't brought Star Cruiser people. In the story, we port in Batu. They can get off the ship just as much as we can.
Right.
So something
That's
to
a good
consider if anyone's listening to that.
Yeah, really good idea right there.
So there was a lieutenant that looked very much like Croy on Batu earlier this week. Didn't go by name, but very much looked like a certain First Order lieutenant that we've seen aboard the Halcyon. So, but they've always had like First Order people. They're just like starting to bring it back now. But that could happen. I think that would be a really good selling point of just like, I want that. What is that?
Let's put our business hats on. I think that's like a fantastic idea to like sell it.
Yeah.
Like just to kind of like, whoa, like that is...
But how do you?
I want that. I want more of that.
Do it with the three sons. That's what makes it
the hard
tricky.
Part. That's the part where it's
just have like SK just like beep booping around, freaking out.
I mean, but let's be real about it. We've all been to the different parks at different times. I've never been in the summer because I have Wampa blood year round, so I will not go south of the weird state of Ohio after May. But the point is that if you think about it, you could very much have different parts of the park that are more climate controlled. So oftentimes, like, here's a little secret of the 501st too. When we do parades, oftentimes, like I know some people, some Vaders will do like a 4th of July parade, right? Well, wherever you are, July is usually the hottest month of the year. And so we'll actually like set up fans in the back of the truck that are majestically blowing the cape, but also like legitimately cooling off Vader. And there are certainly cases all over the place where you could have Wani like in the back of like, the creature stall and like here, like, the same way that they kind of have blocked off Rey and Chewie. You could very easily have one of those characters come out and interact. And the amount of viral that would come out of Wani like coming over and talking to Chewbacca, because they kind of like have that vibe to them, would be pretty next level in my opinion. And that part of it is interesting to me. And I think when we were talking about this on Thank the Maker, when Peter Peter brought up this point that he wasn't he just asked it as a topical thing. It like blew my mind because he goes, did they ever consider that the people who were leaving the Halcyon for the excursion became part of the park for people that were not on the Halcyon? And I was like, what? Then I thought about it because it happened to us on day 3 of the Galactic Star Cruiser first being open. Because I'm sitting there in my gear, looking all smugglery, waiting for my friends to literally come over and bring me a tip-yip. And I'm just sitting here. And these kids are looking at me being like, this guy's like got a side quest for us. 100%. Like, why else would he be dressed like that? Because like, at the time, like we were allowed to, they've certainly been very, very loose with people who have gone on the Star Cruiser. Hey man, you're paying. I mean, like think about it. Our first trip, like there was a dude who walked around as old Rex. We had like 2 Imperial officers walking around. Like they were super cool with us wearing costumes. And from what I've seen in the groups, other people they've been very lenient about people wearing costumes. And so for me to have like my scoundrel get up on with like fake blaster cartridges and all this stuff, I was kind of prepared for that. So I brought extra goodies and stuff to give away, which of course is Disney's nightmare. But the part of it that I thought was interesting was like the dad comes up to me after, he's like, hey man, do you work here? And I was like, no, I don't. I was like, don't call the cops. But also I was like, I'm just here on the Star Cruiser. And his like brain switch in a second. He was like, oh, he was like, you're doing that thing? You're doing that thing? I'm like, yeah. He's like, is it so sweet? And I'm like, absolutely. And it just makes me think how many other people would that push over the edge to be like, screw it, I'm booking that thing. That looks awesome. Everything about this looks awesome. And I feel like that part of it, I became an extension of Galaxy's Edge for those kids. In that brief little 15 seconds that I interacted with them, they were like, I came to Star Wars Land, I saw Stormtroopers and Chewbacca, and even there was a guy in the mess hall that gave us a little side quest. Again, I'm not supposed to do that, but I understand the point. But it's kind of, you understand what I'm getting at. It's like the byproduct of them unintentionally, because we asked Matt Martin about this, the writer, one of the writers of Story Group, and he goes, oh, I guess we never thought about that. And I'm like, well, here you go, $1 million idea. We're just giving you away. But I think it's really important for them to remember that, you have clearly, I mean, Sarah, you run one of the groups. Like people go all out for this stuff.
They go all out for it.
And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you, right?
But here's the thing.
You're doing this trip, why wouldn't you?
But then why would Disney put money into putting Kevin or Wani out there when we're doing it and we're paying them to do it?
Well,
right?
I mean, it's always going to be a valid point, but I think the biggest criticism, of course, is that after you've gone enough, does Galaxy's Edge start to just feel like a shopping mall?
Yeah.
I can't disagree with that. If you go on all the rides, you do that stuff, that's great. And it's awesome, and I enjoy myself every single time, but like it is such an immersive experience that people are more critical of that park than they probably are at any other place besides your amenities and Super Disney people, for sure, because people like me who are not Disney people have never gone to Disney until they put Star Wars in, and now I've gone 3 times. So the point of it is like that they have to be feeding that system more, because people like me are going to keep expecting that there's going to be things that are changing. I think Boba Fett, I think Din coming to West, because they'll never come to East. And I hope people are listening to this and going, you guys at East screw up everything for everybody because you don't know how to act with people. And that's part of the reason why they only go to West.
No, I don't think that's the reason why,
I
though.
I think it's because of Star Cruiser. But
yeah, you listen to us now. You have a different reason than I do.
Take me to school. Take me to school on why no one cool ever shows up at East. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we've talked about this, that West is a quote unquote local park.
It's chill. It's so much more chill.
But it's for locals.
It's for locals because there's not too many like international traveling.
Meaning those people go all the time.
Yeah.
And so they're going to get sick of seeing the same thing faster than the tourists that go to
And
World.
I think World is kind of like that staple where it's like, oh, I know that there's going to be this character because it's a certain time of the year, so we know that it's going to get international guests could come and it's a consistent visit. You know you're going to get that experience if it's within that time. The 50, the 50th year or 50th anniversary carried over
for 18
a little
months.
bit before, a little bit after, because they needed to make sure everybody that wanted a chance to go, they were able to go.
Right. But then also Star Cruiser. So Star Cruiser is locked in because of Star Cruiser, and not giving away too much, things that happen on Star Cruiser. That version of Batuu is locked to a very, 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 very specific point in time. So you can't have Boba Fett running around. You can't have.
I wouldn't like it to. I would not like
Mando.
that to break that immersion.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree. And I mean, then all the more reason to fly out to West to go see those things. But let's move on, because we mentioned Mando. They just announced at D23 a couple months ago that Mando is coming to the parks with Grogu in a little satchel. You've been waiting. You've just been waiting for that.
Now it's gonna get flagged. This video is gonna be pulled down because I did that.
No worry.
It's the most iconic.
It's
like the most iconic penny whistle. Yeah, that's right.
We're not monetized. It's fine. But moving on to innovation in costuming. So having Grogu like this is a big deal, and Disney is making bigger strides recently in their costuming. We have Grogu in the little satchel with Mando, which apparently has been in the works since they were filming season 1, according to Favreau. We saw the Project EXO. We saw that announced last year at D23, or Destination D23, and that turned out to be Hulk and Avengers Campus that was there for, I don't know if he's still there, but he was at Avengers Campus. And then nobody even really talked about it, but Wani on Star Cruiser.
Yeah.
Like her face moves. Like she is not just popping a head on and that's it. And she just kind of has to act around it. Like she's able to express, and they didn't make the news like I would have expected it to.
Yeah. I think that's for Wani specifically. That is like the one thing that it amazes you when you first see it, because you think, oh, it's just a mask.
Yeah.
But then when you see expressions and, you're talking to an alien, you're just kind of like,
she's raising her eyebrows at you, and you're like,
jaw dropped, kind of like, what am I seeing right now? Like, oh my gosh. And you don't even know which,
yeah.
Of course, I don't speak Huttese, so,
but yeah, so Disney is
there's
strides.
No handler.
No.
That's what else is interesting. There's no handler.
Yeah.
So like you have to think of like how wild. I mean, it also goes to show you like, unfortunately there is certainly some gatekeeping with the price and certain expectation for guests on the Star Cruiser is that, yes, we assume that everyone who's coming on a Star Cruiser 4 experience is not going to get up in Wani's face and be like, let me see how that, let me see how it works in there, although I'm sure some people would definitely like to, myself included. But I mean, I think it's an accurate point. Grogu is certainly going to be the talk of the town when Mando comes out. I will be very interested to see where the handler plays in what they allow people to do and what they don't. Because correct me if I'm wrong, besides Rey and Chewie, very occasionally, like Boba isn't really like stopping to take photos with you. He's kind of like the stormtroopers, right? Like if you catch them and they happen to be at a stop where they have a set route in the park, right? And they kind of will stop for a second and they know that people are going to come up and take selfies with them. That's fine. But I think Boba is like the same thing. Like, I don't think like you can go up and be like, hey, Boba, could I get a photo with you? He doesn't do that, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No, he doesn't.
So it'll be very interesting to see how people interact with that, especially because the Grogu is animatronic. There is probably a chance that there is going to be a handler that is in plain clothes, or a Batuu person,
right,
that will be operating him, like R2 has been occasionally, as we've seen R2 occasionally zip around. I think that's probably what will happen. But at the same time, I'm curious to see how the interaction is going to be with Grogu, especially because you have, he's at the side. He'll probably wear him more to the front so that people can kneel down and get a picture with Grogu, or at least talk to him. But I don't think you're going to get that, like, oh, my kid went up to him and had a conversation with Grogu. It's like, that probably won't happen.
No. And I think it's going to happen
I'm
soon.
with you. It has to. I mean, it has to.
Didn't they say November, or they said this year?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're probably going to start to see him show up maybe after New Year's, or maybe before Christmas, or whatever that is. I think costumes wise too, especially, again, how many different wraiths have we seen? And they are like
completely different.
They're completely different, right? So you've got your like extra small to double extra large, and you've got all these different pants, and I'm sure that we're going to talk about it, but you do have professional prop makers and a team of prop makers versus usually cosplayers end up either being like one man show, one person show, or
there you go.
More specifically, yes, Sarah, yes. But seriously, it's like, usually where cosplayers run out of steam is usually financially tied. I can say this as my Boba Fett is, my wife's not going to watch this. I don't care. Boba Fett is really expensive. Yeah, it is. It's really expensive. So, I think that's, we'll get into it a little bit more, but I think, that's where you're starting to see the difference, because people have done incredible animatronics. People have been building Mando's whistling birds, the gauntlet where the little rockets come out and they light up with LEDs. Cosplayers have been doing that for 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's, people have figured it out. People have been building the workable rangefinder on Boba's helmet for years, putting servos and all that kind of stuff. That stuff is available, same as for the Disney shop teams. But you're going to see a little bit more budget, a little bit more time, a couple more hands helping. So,
well, I like to think Disney is kind of like that Apple way of making new products, where people, when Apple comes out with something, it's not, it's new to them, and it's like, oh, here's like the greatest thing. But you have the Androids, the Samsung, oh, we've been doing that for 10 years. It's like, well, how come not every phone has it, or how come it's not done to this level that it's like, sure, I need that, whatever it is, whatever, bubble messages or whatever, I need that. Why haven't we done that? And it's like, well, we've been doing it for 10 years. Like, well, no, this is what I want, not that.
Right.
And I think that's what, when we talk about the Hulk, I was a little, seeing the videos, I didn't see him in person. So, the massiveness of him is, lost on me. But seeing him walk, it still looked like a person on stilts. And as far as like the, articulation for the hands, I thought that was really cool, because I love mechs, and I, would love to have my own little Gundam suit where I could control the hands. But, that idea for me is like, I remember, back in KB Toys, the Terminator hands, like you have articulating fingers that just extended your hand like a foot.
Yeah.
So it's like that technology was there. I know they're working on like making it lighter, making it more of a costume, but I think the performance part of it is in the person that actually in the suit probably needs to be more comfortable on stilts.
Not fluid.
It's not fluid. It doesn't feel like it's a Hulk. It feels like a person in a suit still for me.
Well, and I think too, it's so bulky that like the articulation of the fingers is lost, because Hulk usually has fists.
Yeah.
Like, I've got my green fingers. That's typically how he has his hands. He's got big old hands. So I think what we saw when we literally saw like the exoskeleton of it, and at D23, I got to visit the Imagineering booth and see how they do the skeleton and how it's able to move. But I think just putting such a thick skin over it, for lack of a better term, it just diminished some of the innovation that they put into it.
And then as far as like when Mike was talking about like the viewfinder, all these servos and stuff like that, that kind of reminds me of like the Mickey, the moving the blinking eyes,
And then he would talk.
and he
Did you
would
ever
talk.
see that, Mike?
I'm not a Disney guy. I have no
Oh,
idea
sorry.
what you're
Yes,
talking
yes,
about.
I
I don't even
apologize.
know who Mickey is. Who's Mickey?
So in the parks, there's a meet and greet with Mickey, and the costume, the head, it would have blinking eyes, and his nose would kind of bounce up and down when he would talk. So it was just kind of building that immersion that he's a real character. But again, that one was most of the time behind a meet and greet. It wouldn't be the one walking around or
Right.
like on the parades, because those kind of the actuators and the servos on those type of things, they could be finicky. And
Have like a Chuck E. Cheese kind of eye.
So they don't want that. They want to make sure it's like a consistent experience. And I could see why they're like, hey, this one's not working. His eyes on the
Retire
fritz.
that, for a little bit.
So I think they still face that same difficulty of like, hey, is it going to work every time?
Right. And I mean, they also have to do, however long the park is open, 12, 14-hour shifts versus like a cosplayer that has the viewfinder that's out there for a couple hours.
Yeah.
So I think that's another reason why it probably is, we don't have the innovation that we would want to have or that we see at conventions, because there's people at conventions that just like blow you away with the things that they do.
Oh, I mean, and I think there's like a level of acceptance as well with, a cosplayer, because we're thinking of this is like, I feel like Obadiah Stane from Iron Man, where it's like these cosplayers built these things from scraps in a garage and they can't, like Disney can't create like the same thing, because like there's like a magic that is there.
Yeah.
Having a K2SO, like there's a person behind him, you see him walking with him, but you're just amazed by,
It doesn't matter. You're
this
just like,
big, huge, droid.
And
you
knowing
accept
that
it as
one
a cosplayer.
person made it, or
But,
a small group of people made it.
But you accept it as a cosplay. But if you were to see it in the park, you'd be more critical of it, saying, "Oh, well, there's a guy behind it,
That's a good
controlling
point.
it." So,
Well, I think you see it a lot at like Dragon Con. Like everyone was blown away by how awesome that person was who made the Rancor. Now, granted, the Rancor was person sized, because yes, no one was like, all right, we need 12 of us to make a 24-foot Rancor. But like the scale, the proportion, the slime, the drip, I mean, they had it all. And they made it out of foam. It was incredible. I remember, because everyone's like sharing it, being like, this is the raddest thing. So like, Steven, your point is absolutely taken. And many of us too, of course, it's like, we'll go to a convention. I say this as someone who's like, if you looked inside of my Scout Trooper, it's like, I got duct tape all over that thing that's holding up batteries and voice microphones and speakers and all. I mean, it's every time you troop, you go, is today going to be the day where something's just going to fail, right? Because mind you too, for people that are listening, I mean, the original costumes, the Stormtroopers in the original, in A New Hope, some of them didn't have tube stripes. The brows were like, the faces were smushed. I mean, they were making this stuff out of plastic. And if you got up close to it, it looks like junk. I talk about this on Armor Party all the time. There is literally duct tape on the back of the Sand Troopers packs. You don't have to look much further to go. They had no idea this movie was going to be a hit, and they loved the costumes. They cared about the costumes so much that they painted over Boba Fett in Empire Strikes Back to just change the paint for Return of the Jedi. That's how much they cared about the costumes. Don't put it in a museum. Just paint over it. No one's going to break this stuff down 40 years later. So when you think about it, it's like the shoulder bells on the Return of the Jedi speeder bike, the Scout Troopers. They had the bells were falling off, so they have zip ties on them. We never saw that until we saw the 4K edition. We're like, are those zip ties? They're zip ties. So you have this weird barrier between we've never needed to see these films in HD. It was like whatever you saw, you were going to see. And then now we're in this state of, everything is, of course, 4K, 6K, 8K, all this scalability. The costumes have to be more complicated, which in turn makes things more difficult for us to replicate. Because Boba Fett's original costume in Empire Strikes Back was cobbled together with parts. Just the weirdest stuff you'd ever imagine, that your imagination filled in is like, oh man, like it's a rocket dart. He's got it. It's like, no. That's a turntable cleaning device. That's what that is. They just took the part off and they put it on his neck, and people were like, I bet you it's an anti-security. It's like it was a squeegee for film photography, and they just put it in his belt, and people were like, it's a like super knife. What? You know what I mean? They can't do that anymore. They can't, because people can figure it out. People can see stuff. People saw Jeans Guy and like lost their mind over it. So it's like we're at this weird intersection between where, and you did see the difference between the Rogue One Stormtrooper in the original trilogy Stormtrooper. All these like vacuum form molded stuff that we had in the original trilogy now is made out of urethane. It's flexible. They're molding in the indents. The tube stripes aren't stickers anymore. They're like indented in and then filled in. So things are getting more complicated. The First Order Stormtrooper is way more complicated than an original trilogy Stormtrooper. So we're kind of at this difference and this intersection between where film only might need them on screen for a little bit, and then you have even the difference between a stunt costume and a hero costume. Well, now you're actually able to go up and see these characters as close as you want to get before they kick you out of the park, but you can certainly have it's getting harder and harder for people to lose that suspension of disbelief, because our expectations are our adult part of our brain that wants to figure out why the magic works. But your kids, my kid, the kids we met on Saturday, that was Hulk. That was Hulk up there. That Hulk is 10 feet tall. That's Hulk right there. They don't think about that. So we have this like weird intersection between what costuming is supposed to serve, the practicality of us, like, could I add rockets to the back of my Rising Phoenix on my Din Djarin? Of course I could. Would Disney do that? Probably not, because if you light up rockets, why would you just fire your rockets off? You should fly away. So they probably have to figure out how to get Din Djarin to fly up past the top of the former Oga's Cantina extension. So who knows? Like, things could happen, but there is that intersection between being like, we have to figure out what's believable. And again, our target market isn't 50-year-old guys who want to complain on the internet. It's kids. And we have to remind ourselves of that,
Yeah, constantly. So I think let's wrap up on the last kind of topic, which is variety. So talking about conventions and going and seeing all these like fun mashups, like what creative limitations does Disney face that cosplayers just get to go wild with, right? Like the Fab Five, you see them in the park, and Mike, you're not a Disney person. The Fab Five is Mickey and his friends, but they'll dress them up for cute
different.
little, yeah. Mickey, this is Mickey, yeah. But
I was like Chris Webber. Yeah. I was like Chris Webber.
So they're like, I mean, they're all original Disney characters, but they're the main mascots of the Disney parks, and so they get to dress up in cute costumes for Halloween, and they get to wear their little 50th celebration outfits, and they get to wear different outfits. Mickey's a magician, Minnie's on the red carpet, so they get a little bit of creativity when it comes to the Fab Five. But when it comes to the rest of the characters in the park, like Boba Fett's not going to be walking around wearing a Santa hat for Christmas time. Yeah. They're not going to be able to do these fun mashups like when you see a Boba Fett at the convention and it's Boba Tea, right? So I guess let me ask this instead, is what are some of the fun crossovers that you've seen at conventions that have really stuck out for you? Because we know that we'll never get to see those types of things in the Disney parks.
There was like Celebration Chicago. There was a Superman Stormtrooper, and he had like the black swirl on the top of his head, and had like it was Stormtrooper armor, but it was all blue, and then the crotch piece was red, and then they had the, and then there was like a Rick and Morty trooper. I mean, even I had fun. I went as Speedy Mike. I make like these little like business cards. It's just something fun that I'm like a scout trooper lumberjack who's like sick of hitting trees, cut the trees down. And I walked around with that, and I gave those cards out to people, and people thought that was hilarious. I think, I think we can always, especially you go to a convention and it's so wild because you show up as a standard stormtrooper and it's like the most boring costume there, right? But like at any other case, you walk around as a stormtrooper, like you are, good luck when we do Halloween stuff. Like you're lucky if you can walk down a block without getting stopped 20 times to take a picture with people, because that's like literally what people think of when they think of Star Wars. And so I think like you have this issue where, especially with 3D printers and especially like on the topic of speed, there really isn't any approval. You see a lot of times in the costuming community, you get people who always want to be first to market. That's always the thing, right? So, okay, I've assessed, I've used all of my engineering resources. We've figured out that, Brendan Wayne is 6'1", so that means that his arm is this long, his head is this big. So the shoulder piece is 2.5 feet. Okay, cool. We figured that out. So now they can go in, they can model it and do all that stuff. But everyone wants to be the first to market. So now you have like, oh, this is my version of Din Djarin's helmet V4. Well, it's like if you're any of the licensed partners, if you're EFX, if you're Dueno Novo, you don't get to do that. You have to literally have one version that comes out, and granted, they're able to get more resources than we are, official resources, but they have to get things signed off, and so it kind of puts the power into the cosplayers' hands, because I mean, how fast was Brittany's? Like, we had a Ned B before Kenobi was even over. Like, I think before the series finale, like, she made a Ned B out of foam, and it looked awesome. Like,
it was amazing.
It was incredible. Yeah. So it's like, I think you have those cases where cosplayers are literally only limited by their imagination and also by their budget. I mean, it's crazy when I see some people that are like fully committed, and I know that like conventions bring out people, because there are plenty of my friends who literally have like their followers, their group, their way that they do sponsorship is that like they are costumers. So they have to have this level of, every time I go to Dragon Con, I have to have 5 costumes. I'm premiering costumes, which is like weird to me, but I totally get that people do it because it's a big deal to them. But I've never thought that I would do anything that people would be interested in. So the process for people to show up and do, I mean, even like Bantha Betty, like that's super fun. That's like, that stuff I think is what makes the cons, especially coming from Celebration. You see people who do like deep cut characters, like we've all seen at the, like that couple that had the skeletons on their back, and every farm boy Luke they saw, they would go up and like fall over, and then the smoke machine would come out. And
oh my God.
Like,
no.
You didn't see them?
No.
Oh, that was hilarious. They had all black on with the charred skeletons of Owen and Beru, and then every time they would see a Tatooine Luke, they'd run up and they'd go, Luke, and they would just lay down, and then the smoke would come out, and then Luke would be like, no! It's incredible. But it's like, in what other world besides the convention circuit, especially Celebration too, are you able to like triple down? It's almost like the jokes are so meta at this point that like no one else would get them besides being at Celebration or whatever it is. So I don't know. I mean, I think of like some of my favorite costumes are, I mean, I always love, you get like some deep cut character. I love that you like, I think we saw almost all the original like Rick Baker style Cantina creatures. We have one in our garrison, like it's Muff Tuck, the big furry white one that has the little like almost like beak that comes down and drinks out of the the blue milk. Then you have like the original, you remember like there's like a space, like almost like a 1970s like space ranger who's like getting a milk at the beginning of the cantina. You know what I'm talking about? Has like the classic like dome helmet.
No. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, Steven? I'm looking at you. like someone's wearing, so like doing that. And then you have like, you just have these, you just have the creativity of people who want to go and make these deep cut characters because they know that that is the space where people would appreciate that. Right. And I think it's awesome. I love the mashup stuff. I think it's all super funny. The stinginess in me is always like, how could you buy a stormtrooper costume just to destroy it? But I love that people do it because it provides me great joy.
And that's why they do it, Mike.
I know it's because they want to show off for Armor Party. I totally get it. But no, I think it's awesome. I love where the community's at right now. I love where the community is in regards to people who build and recognizing people who build. And I do at the same time, like I also wish that people would take a step back and remind ourselves that these experiences oftentimes should be aimed for younger audiences because that's how you make a fan for life. And standing around and like hoo-haing at a character that no one like, hey, the Boba Fett helmet is a little oversized. I totally get it. Yes, the gauntlets might accidentally kind of open up from the piano hinge. Your kids don't care. Relax. Yep. It's not that big of a deal. Your kid is going to think Boba Fett is there. Your kid is going to be a Star Wars fan for life. Focus on that. Don't worry about the gauntlets.
Yep. I think that's a great place to end it on. Is like we're sitting here not being critical, but just like analyzing the difference between what Disney's doing in the parks and what these cosplayers are doing in the costuming groups and all these stringent standards that they have. But at the end of the day, it's all about the kids, and like it doesn't matter to them at all what it looks like. They believe that they're seeing this character in real life.
Well, Star Wars is real. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but I don't even think it's just the kids. It's just that that childlike wonderment of like, I just want to be happy. Like seeing this like joke that probably no one else would know it makes me happy, makes me laugh, makes me want to share it with other people and have a good time. And I think that's like the other part of it is like, it's just here to, yes, we could be, detailed and say, oh man, this is like the best costume I've ever seen. But at the same time, there's the journey of building that costume, like the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into it. Then the story afterwards that, man, this is what it took. Because, I know people that have built costumes and said, all right, I'm going to flip it and I'm going to go build this other costume. Because Mike, I'm looking at you, had as a journey of here's this costume. I love it. I wore it. And then I want this new journey. So you're a glutton for punishment, but it's one of those things that it's just, there's a joy there for either the building of it, the wearing of it, or whatever. Yeah,
we just have to get back to just like enjoying these things and just like looking at things like we did as kids. Just have fun with it. So what is Nick's thing? Imagine enjoying the things you like.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah. Yes.
We need to put that on a shirt.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for joining us for this. This was a lot of fun. I know you, like us, always have your hand in everything, but tell us what you have going on, where people can find you on the internet.
Well, many people probably know me from my little side gig called Hondo Supply, where I make a lot of park-inspired wearables and things to enhance your experience when park going. So you can find me at Hondo Supply on Instagram, and then you can also listen to Armor Party, a podcast about Star Wars costuming over at Armor Party Show on Instagram, and you can find us wherever you get your podcast. And I'm trying to think of what else we have coming up. Oh, we're doing, by the time this airs, we do this thing that I started last year. It's called the ORD-AMENT Drive, which is a charity drive where people are like, why is it called ornament? You screwed up ornament. And I said, well, it's not called Orn Mantell. Thank you very much. And so what we do is I have a bunch of artists who are costumers and who are incredible painters and artists and crafters. And I send out these holiday ornaments. So they paint them and they're in different themes, and then we auction them off for charity. And last year we raised over $5,000 for Magic Wheelchair. And by the time this comes out, we'll probably have more information that's out there, and you can see how much bigger we're making the dang thing, which is going to be incredible. So, find us over at Honda Supply or at Armor Party Show. and let's talk and teach me about Mickey, whoever that is.
One day you'll learn. And you'll be announcing the ORD-AMENT project on Instagram. So we will link your Instagram in the show notes for that. So thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. We appreciate you.
So you heard from Mike on Armor Party. You've heard from Princess the Scoundrel. So go listen to the trifecta, Thank the Maker, and we'll catch you guys later.
Thanks for hanging with us. Until next time.